Right, we are now on Unit 1 review. Directions for 19 through 21. Decide if the following function represent functions or not. Explain why or why not to receive full credit. So we'll say yes or no, and then we will tell why. All right, 19 is a table, and if you remember when we're looking at tables, we want to see every input has to have exactly one output, so we want to be thinking of are there any inputs that are the same that have different outputs? And I notice right here that 2, 6, and 2, 8 is a problem because 2 is one input, but it has two different outputs. So this one is going to be a no. And I will just say that 2 has two outputs, and that is not okay. Alrighty, number 20. If we're going to find this one, I'm going to actually use a vertical line test on this one. So if I draw some vertical lines through, I notice that these vertical lines are each crossing through 2 times. They're only allowed to cross through 1 time. So this is going to be no, and I'm going to say this graph does not pass the vertical line test. All right. 21. A teacher makes a table that lists the number of letters X in the last name and the number of letters Y in the first name of each student in the class. So again, we want to decide yes or no on this one. So I'm going to start by making a table because we'll find that a lot easier. Okay, it said that X was the number of letters in the last name and Y was the number of letters in the first name. All right, so we're just going to start thinking here. Let's say Jewel Wiersma is a student in the class. She has 7 letters in her last name and she has 5 letters in her first name. Okay, and then let's say Tom Dawson is in the class. He has 6 letters in his last name and he has 3 letters in his first name. Okay, let's say Jewel's brother Justin Wiersma is also in the class. He again has 7 letters in his last name, but then he would have 6 letters in his first name. And notice how I've made that so it's not a function because 2 that have the same input have different outputs. So this is going to be a no, and I'm going to say students with the same last name can have different numbers of letters in their first name. Different numbers of letters in their first name. So that is definitely a big no. Okay, 22. Complete the table and graph. F of x equals the absolute value of x plus 1. Okay, if you remember with absolute values, after you find your answer, if it ends up being negative, we're just going to make it positive because absolute values make sure everything is positive. So in this first one, when it says x is negative 2, I'm going to just, wherever I see this x right here, I'm going to plug in the variable that they gave me instead. So we're going to have negative 2 plus 1. Okay, negative 2 plus 1 is negative 1, and the absolute value of negative 1 is positive 1. Okay, now let's plug in negative 1. So negative 1 plus 1. Negative 1 plus 1 is 0. The absolute value of 0 is 0. Okay, then let's plug in 0. So 0 plus 1 is 1. The absolute value of 1 is 1. It doesn't make it negative, it just keeps it positive. It only affects the answer if your answer turned out to be negative. Okay, the next one, let's plug in 1. So 1 plus 1 is 2. The absolute value of 2 is 2. And then plugging in 2. 2 plus 1 is 3. The absolute value of 3 is 3. Okay, now we're ready to graph. So this first one, negative 2, 1, we're going to go to the left 2 and up 1. For negative 1, 0, we're going to go to the left 1 and stay put. 0, 1, we're going to stay put and go up 1. 1, 2, we're going to go to the right 1 and up 2. And 2, 3, we're going to go to the right 2 and up 3. So I can see that this is making a V. All right, and then it says, and this should be part B, use your table and or graph to explain why the equation above is a function. So if we use the graph, I notice when I'm drawing vertical lines, each line is only passing through 1 time. So we could say that the graph passes the vertical line test. That would be one reason. Or We could look at our table, and if you're looking at our table, we notice that every input has exactly one output. So that would be another reason if we wanted to put that. Every input has exactly one output. Okay, and if you look at our table, I notice that -2, 1 and 0, 1 both have outputs of 1. That's like the dollar menu, which is totally okay. Right, number 23. TCBY charges $3.50 for a large cup of frozen yogurt plus 89 cents for each topping. They offer 8 different toppings. The total cost of the yogurt Y is a function of the number of toppings N. For part A, it says to identify the independent and dependent variables. Remember, independent, you have total control over this. What do you get to choose? Do you get to choose the total cost of the yogurt, or do you get to choose the number of toppings? You definitely get to choose the number of toppings. So the independent variable is going to be the number of toppings. Okay, and then the dependent variable, what depends on how many toppings you choose, it would be the total cost. So the total cost will be our dependent variable. Okay, for part B, it says to make a table of values for all numbers in the domain. So we're going to make a table of values. Instead of x, we're going to use n this time because that's the variable they gave us. And then we'll use y. And then from here, where did I lose my, way up there. All right, when I'm looking at the number of toppings, I could get no toppings all the way up to 8. I have my pad crooked. I'm definitely trying crooked. Sorry about that. Okay, so if I get no toppings, this yogurt is going to cost me $3.50. But every single time I add a topping, I have to add 89 cents. So if I add $3.50 to an 89 cents, I'm going to get $4.39. And then I'm just going to keep adding 89 cents every time I add a topping. $5.28, and then if I add another 89 cents, that will be $6.17. And if I add another 89 cents, that will be $7.06. And then if I add another 89 cents, whoops, added wrong, 7.06 plus 0.89, that gives me $7.95. And then if I add another 89 cents, that's going to give me $8.84. And then if I add another 89 cents, that's going to give me $9.73. And if I add another 89 cents, 9.73 plus 89 cents, that gives me $10.62. So I could be paying up to $10 for 1 cup of yogurt. I don't think so. All right, so that was my table. All right, and then identified the domain and the range of the function. Remember, domain is the input and the range is the output. So what's the fewest number in my input and what's the biggest number? The fewest number of toppings I can put is 0. I'll label this domain. And the most number of toppings I can get is 8. Right? And then range, what's the smallest or biggest I'll pay? The smallest I'll pay is $3.50 and the largest I'll pay is $10.62. All right, last one, problem number not 30, how about 24? Let f of x equal 1/2 x plus 3. Find f of -6. So wherever we see an x, we're going to put -6. We're going to put a -6 here and a -6 here. So we're going to have f of -6 equals 1/2 times -6 plus 3. Okay, we don't really need to do anything with the left side. If you remember, that's just notation. So we're just going to work with the right side. Half of -6 is -3. -3 plus 3 is 0. So my answer would be 0.